I want to leave my girlfriend who was roped. About a year and a bit ago, my girlfriend was kidnapped as she was exiting her workplace. Fortunately, she wasn't killed, but her attacker did scare her with a weapon. Luckily, the shop she's employed at had video cameras in the parking area, and with the footage of the assault and the bank across the road capturing the assailant's vehicle on camera, the police managed to apprehend him within a day. With the video evidence and DNA tests, he didn't even dispute the charges, he simply admitted guilt to avoid the harshest penalty. Due to the grave factors, like the weapon, the judge sentenced him to 20 years, but with good behavior, he could be released in roughly 10 years. I'm sharing all this to explain that her assailant isn't a threat anymore. She doesn't have to worry about him returning for her for about a decade. Clearly, this was an extremely upsetting event in her life, and although I wasn't directly affected, it was still very upsetting for me too. I can't fathom what she endured, and I don't equate my experience to hers. However, I've struggled with serious bouts of sadness because I couldn't defend her, and the thought of someone else hurting her was sometimes almost unbearable. Shortly after the incident, she didn't wish to see me, which I understand. It pained me, but I comprehended. Her parents fetched her from the hospital, and I didn't see or hear from her for a week, which I somewhat understand, but I think a simple message just to say she was fine would have been nice. After a week, her sister informs me that she's staying with her parents and will contact me in a few days. She never did. Instead, her sister texts me again, asking me to visit for a short chat. I arrive and I'm met at the door by her mother, who calmly but coldly instructs me on how to behave and what to say. I'm also told not to touch her, like hugging or anything. Alright, I understand. Significant trauma. They've probably been advised by therapists on how to act around her, so I comply. I enter, and she's sitting with her dad standing beside her and her sister on the sofa. As I enter, the sister explains that my girlfriend wants me to know she's okay but is obviously traumatized and appreciates my patience during her recovery. She didn't speak a word to me and barely glanced at me. This was shortly after the event, and I understood this was the situation, but honestly, the entire conversation felt very awkward. I leave, head home, and start researching how to support a kidnapping survivor and what to expect. She begins therapy, initially twice a week, then reduces to once a week after 2 months. Eventually, she contacts me to meet at a cafe. I arrive, and she's already there. At this time, she's so medicated she seems like a zombie, emotionless and methodical in speech. Essentially, she meets me to say she can't date me for a while until she resolves some issues. Of course, I say I understand. This was nearly a month post-attack, and our first solo conversation, so I was already assuming this. I assure her I'm there for her, for whatever she needs, be it space or support. I start to say I love her, but she interrupts. She says she doesn't want to hear that now and asks for my respect for her wishes. I'm a bit hurt and surprised but agree to her request. She begins texting me the next day, minor things, but I see it as progress towards normalcy. This continues for another month and a half. I then ask if we can have dinner, but she doesn't respond for 2 days and then says she needs to consult her therapist first. Finally, she agrees, setting the date a month ahead. By now, it's almost 4 months since the attack, and we've had one in-person conversation and one odd one with her family. It's worth noting, I'm not being updated on her progress by anyone. I understand I'm not officially family, but some information would have been nice. We meet at a familiar bistro, and I wait for her. After 30 minutes, I text, and she replies she's on her way. She arrives, snaps at me for asking personal questions, and we eat. Afterward, I suggest talking, but she seems anxious and leaves quickly. She resumes texting the next day as if nothing happened. We start meeting for lunch weekly, and she gradually opens up. She tells me about her new job. This goes on for another 4 months. I'm pleased to see her but feel very lonely. We haven't even held hands. Then one day, she doesn't show up for lunch. I text, no response. I call her parents to ensure she's okay and get vague answers. After insisting, her mom says she's fine but to not expect contact for a while. I start wondering if she's had a setback and is hospitalized. 2 weeks pass, and I hear nothing. Trying to stay rational, I call her sister, who apologizes and says her sister instructed them not to let me contact her. At this point, I'm heartbroken, not understanding what I've done wrong. I haven't pressured her. I haven't pushed her to be with me in any way, only to chat with me, and even those talks have been very basic to avoid upsetting her. I then receive a message from her, asking if I would meet her at an address I didn't recognize, but it turned out to be a therapist's office. I'm asked to be there at 4, which means I have to leave my job early. At the office, I check in and am informed that the therapist wishes to speak with me alone first. She greets me and gives me a list of things to do and not do. Then she tells me my girlfriend wants to talk and has something important to say. I enter the room, and she's sitting there, with tissues, having been crying. The therapist explains that my girlfriend needs to tell me something in the safety of the office. She then reveals that she didn't show up for our lunch because she was with another man from her new job, and they had been intimate. It felt as if she had physically hurt me. I just lower my head and start to cry. The therapist tries to rationalize it, saying it was about reclaiming her sexuality after the assault and that it wasn't cheating in the usual sense. My girlfriend then tells me she doesn't want to lose me, that she's really confused, and it was a one-time incident. I felt really trapped. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became, until I finally told her, "You haven't even touched me in 6 months, yet you're intimate with a coworker while I wait like a fool." This makes her hysterical, and the therapist asks me to leave. I apologize and tell her to message me if she wants to work things out. She does text later, saying it was a huge mistake and begging to talk. I tell her I'm unsure if I can continue, but agree to meet. I tell her straight away that to even consider continuing, she must stop seeing this co-worker. She says it's impossible because they work together, but I can't accept that. She decides to find a new job, and after discussing with my sister, who knows everything, she suggests that some women seek intimacy after an assault to regain control. Why she didn't choose me, I don't know, but I feel like I'm being punished for something I didn't do. She changes jobs, and we resume our lunches. After twice meeting for lunch, I tell her I'm tired of just that, so she agrees to come over to watch TV. That's all that's happened until tonight. Tonight, she came over, we watched movies and had pizza. During the second movie, I try to kiss her, but she pulls away as if I were dangerous, saying she's not ready. I admit I lost my temper, reminding her it's been over a year, and I haven't pressured her, yet she was with someone else months ago. She starts crying, and I apologize for my tone but express that I feel excluded and betrayed. I don't care what they call it, she willingly was intimate with someone else. I feel I've been a supportive boyfriend, but now I tell her not to text me until I decide what to do. A year is a long time, and we're no closer to normal. I confess I'm tired of the lack of intimacy. I understand not being intimate immediately after the incident, but it's been a year. We're not even holding hands, and knowing she's been with someone else is killing me inside. So, I told her I need time to think and we'll talk next week. But right now, I think I'm done. I love her, despise the person who hurt us, and know this isn't her fault. But staying makes me resentful, and if she suddenly becomes intimate, it'll feel insincere. Yet ending things seems unfair to her too. Update. First, I want to share that when I wrote my initial post, I was definitely in a very hard situation. The incident that night was still very much on my mind, and the pain I was feeling then was overwhelming. Writing it out was healing for me, after which I decided to drink a lot of Jim Beam. I called in sick yesterday from my job, and it wasn't a lie since I had a terrible hangover and spent time switching between being sick and resting with a cold pack on my head. I finally checked Reddit last night, and I was incredibly surprised by the number of messages I received. With all that said, here I am today. Even though everyone assured me I wasn't mean or in the wrong, it still doesn't sit well with me. I feel like I've failed and think that if I had been more bold earlier on, we might have changed things. I'm not sure I showed enough how deeply I loved and still love her. Ending this relationship feels like I'm losing a part of myself. I haven't had any real food since Sunday night. I realize I need to stop drinking, and yes, I called out of work again today, but right now not feeling anything seems better than the tough decision I feel I must make. Before I talk about my plans, I do want to clarify a few things. As I mentioned, I wrote the original post while I was still very upset, so I might not have been clear enough or may have unfairly portrayed some people. First, about her parents, I've known them since the early days of our relationship. They've always been nothing but friendly to me, and we've had meals at their house regularly. My family always celebrates Christmas on Christmas Eve, so I've spent 3 of the last 4 Christmases with them. I don't hold them responsible or blame them. Their daughter was violently hurt and traumatized, so naturally, they protected her, which I can understand even though I don't have kids. Her dad has been as affected as anyone, and it's been sad to see such a tall and strong man, truly 6 feet 6 inches, so deeply affected. Her sister has been an important support for me. She has talked with me and has always tried to be as truthful as she can. Yes, they knew about the infidelity, which is why I was getting vague answers. They didn't agree with her decision but chose to support her. Second, about her therapist, I can't evaluate their skill, but upon rereading what I wrote, I think I made it sound worse than it was. The therapist didn't make excuses or justify her actions. As I suggested, after a moment of silence, broken only by my crying, the therapist mentioned that some women do that. I also read comments thinking it was the therapist's idea for her to be intimate with someone else, but that's not true. My girlfriend told her therapist about it, and she encouraged my girlfriend to tell me in a safe place. I wanted to clear those things up because I didn't do justice to either of them. My girlfriend was my closest friend. I've confided in her about everything. I have work colleagues I'm friendly with, but I live far from where I grew up, and all my friends are there, either married or focused on their careers, so I don't have a strong support network. My sister has been there for me, but it's complicated. My girlfriend and my sister are close friends, which is actually how I met my girlfriend. While my sister loves me and wants the best for me, she's also understanding towards her friend and doesn't want me to hurt either of us. She doesn't agree with the cheating but tries to minimize it. She doesn't know that my girlfriend and I haven't been physically close since the incident. To be honest, that's not her business, and I think she would be upset with me if I let her think that's a factor. My girlfriend has been sending me lots of texts since Sunday night. She's saying everything I've wanted to hear since about a month after the incident. I've received more expressions of love in the past day than in the past year. I've only replied twice, so she knows I'm reading them. This makes my next step very difficult. I decided last night early this morning that for my mental health, I can't continue. Believe me, I know how much of a failure it feels like and how awful it makes me feel. Here's my plan. I admit it's cowardly, but I've written a letter and will send it to her therapist, with a note explaining what to do, for my girlfriend to read in her office. This way, she has immediate support. I don't want her to feel more abandoned than what I'm doing, which is tough to admit. When she goes to her appointment Friday morning, I'll then send emails to her parents and a text to her sister, informing them of what's happening so they can be there for her. Here's the letter I've written, just not using real names. Please read it and let me know if I'm being too harsh or if this might cause her more emotional distress related to the incident. I don't want to cause more pain than what's typical in a breakup. I just need to know if this is the right approach. Dear Sarah, I realize this isn't the ideal way to do this, but I'm certain that if I had to face you, I wouldn't be able to follow through. My love for you began from our first month together, and the initial 3 years were the happiest of my life. You were my everything, and our frequent discussions about marriage made me truly believe we were destined to wed. The thought of being your husband filled me with immense joy and pride. It's hard for me to express this because I really don't want to, but for my own mental well-being, I must let you go. This decision wasn't easy, nor does it lessen the heartbreak I feel. My love for you remains, but I can't continue our relationship. You need time to recover and fully focus on yourself, and my presence and emotions are only hindering that process. I will forever resent the person who harmed you. The damage he caused makes a life sentence seem more fitting than what he received, but that's not for me to decide. Holding on to anger isn't healthy, but he's affected both our lives profoundly. I understand if you feel resentful towards me for this decision, and I don't blame you. You might feel left behind, but please know I've done all I can to support you. I've wanted to be more involved in your recovery, but I felt somewhat left out of your close support circle. This has made me feel isolated and distant from you and your family. My only wish was to be there for you, and I hope I was helpful whenever you allowed me to be. The fact that you sought solace with someone else while withholding any affection for me has been very difficult for me to bear. I have forgiven you, but that doesn't erase the deep pain it caused. I somewhat understand your reasons, even though I don't agree with them and never will. However, this isn't about that. We're over a year past the incident, and you still act as if I'm a threat to you. Your withdrawal from my attempt at a kiss showed me you're still healing, and I don't know how long that will take. I can't indefinitely pause my life, which is where we seem to be stuck. I know it sounds selfish, but I need love and companionship, both emotionally and physically. Our conversations have been superficial and unexciting for the past year. I understand why, but we used to spend hours dreaming about our future. Now, we barely talk beyond choosing movies. My decision isn't a result of what happened to you. That event was tragic and transformative for you, and I've never judged you for it. This is about your recovery and the distance you've put between us. Despite my best efforts, it's clear that I'm no closer to you now than I was immediately after the incident. To make it clear, there's no one else in my life. I'm not involved with anyone else, nor do I have the intention to be anytime soon. I have never been unfaithful to you. My deepest hope is for you to recover fully and find happiness. Maybe one day, you can look back on our time together fondly and forgive me. My love for you remains, and this decision breaks my heart more than you'll ever know. Love, Chad. Final update. I have figured out a few things lately. The first thing is that I was clueless about how many English instructors, literature students, and overall editors were actually on Reddit. I received so many comments just fixing my clearly bad spelling and grammar that I started to feel self-conscious. Seriously though, thanks to those who spent time correcting that for structure, grammar, and spelling. I even value those who provided me with detailed explanations and reasons for my mistakes. The second thing I've realized is that this community is mostly kind and supportive. I've been offered phone numbers to call, emails to check out, and lists of resources to assist me in my journey. I'm truly grateful for the touching stories shared with me, and believe it or not, I've read every single one, even though the count was around 2,500 messages. Folks have proposed buying me drinks, hanging out, and I even got a quirky offer for a hand job to ease my stress, which was both charming and funny. But, the main lesson I've learned lately is to never sign your real name on a public letter if you don't want it traced back to people in your life. It's hard to deny it was you when every detail matches and you used your own silly name. Many people were curious about the outcome of things. To put it simply, it didn't go as planned. Looking back, I wrote the letter and then, with the help of several Redditors, rewrote it for better structure, removing the part where I said the rapist destroyed her, agreeing it wasn't suitable to say. In fact, I nearly removed him completely, except for wishing he received a longer sentence. However, I kept the part about being her husband, feeling strongly that I needed to include that. My original plan was to send it to her therapist's office with instructions on what to say. But I realized there was no chance she'd receive it in time, so I planned to deliver it myself and talk to her. But that never happened. Late one Wednesday night, I got a knock on my door. To my surprise, it was her sister and my sister. Her sister had printouts of my posts and the responses to my previous threads and simply asked if it was me. Initially, I tried to deny it. I couldn't recall everything I wrote, especially the first post, so I was trying to dodge any issues. But my sister confronted me directly and I knew I was caught. I just hung my head. This led to a lengthy discussion that went on till early morning. At first, her sister was emotional, understandably upset and questioning how I could think of doing this. Surprisingly, my sister defended me, arguing that I had done more than most and that Sarah shouldn't still be distant from me a year later. She didn't know we weren't as close physically. When my sister finished, I'll call her Sister Susan for simplicity, Susan admitted she was right. She pleaded with me to reconsider my letter, reminding me that I promised Sarah a week. She passionately spoke about the love she saw between us. My sister also noticed the love in my heart and suggested waiting another week. So, I agreed not to deliver the letter, out of guilt, regret, or love, I'm not sure. Then, the most embarrassing moment happened. Susan hugged me as they left, and it had been a long time since I had any close contact, leading to an awkward moment with my sister. All I could do was apologize and express my embarrassment. Luckily, Susan was understanding. She just wanted me to talk to Sarah the next day. Despite being exhausted, I went to work, not wanting to use all my PTO on this. After work, planning to go straight to bed, there was another knock. It was Susan and Sarah, with Sarah holding the printout. They were both emotional, and seeing Sarah like that always affects me. They sat down, and after a long silence, I offered Sarah water. When I turned around in the kitchen, she was there, asking if I was really leaving her. I was speechless, feeling broken and ashamed. She sat next to me, trying to read my post but couldn't finish. Susan then explained they had talked all day and realized how unfairly I was treated. Seeing my pain in writing struck a nerve with everyone, showing how deeply hurt I was, yet I hadn't blamed them. Sarah was nodding her head the whole time. She then spoke up, admitting she hadn't considered my feelings enough and realized her actions were unfair to me, especially when I had been nothing but kind and loving towards her. She pleaded for another chance, saying that my desire to end our relationship was a wake-up call for her. She acknowledged taking me for granted and committed to a year's worth of apologies. Susan, in a calm manner, mentioned their afternoon discussion about Sarah's infidelity and her lack of physical contact with me. Sarah admitted she had no justifiable excuses. She understood her actions were wrong and knew she had no right to ask for my forgiveness, but she did so anyway. She also emphasized making it a priority to discuss any physical barriers with her therapist. This conversation lasted quite a while. I could share more details, but I'll keep it brief. Notably, during our talk, Sarah reached out and held my hand, a gesture she used to do often. I can't deny, it felt really good. They both stayed over that night. Nothing intimate happened. Susan slept on the futon, Sarah on the couch, and I went to my bed. I called out of work early Thursday morning as I was too exhausted. Sarah woke me around 10 a.m., gently rubbing my arm. She told me she was heading to her therapy session but wanted to express her love and assure me she'd return afterward. She gave me a quick kiss on the lips before leaving. That moment weakened my resolve, which had been based on the belief that her actions were just words prompted by my threat to leave. But the gestures from her, her sister, and my sister had gradually broken down my defenses. After her therapy session, Sarah returned with lunch, and we spent the afternoon and the entire weekend together. You can guess what happened between us. I was cautious, not wanting to trigger any negative emotions in her. She was very affectionate and emotional. She cried afterward, which alarmed me, but she explained it was from a mix of joy and regret. She was overwhelmed by the feeling of love. We spent hours together, and she mentioned a recommendation from her therapist for couples counseling, which we plan to start soon. I understand this isn't what some people expected, and I apologize if it disappoints anyone. I'm prepared for criticism, but ultimately, I need to focus on my own happiness. For the first time in over a year, I've been happy for 4 consecutive days. I realize this isn't the end and that we have challenges ahead, but I believe this was a real turning point for her. If not, why would she go through all this emotional effort? In summary, I love her, always have, and just wanted her to show the same love in return. This past weekend was significant for both of us, and I feel we can build something new together. Thank you, Reddit, for your support. I feel fortunate and grateful.